In this section, we're going to start making a couple changes to our project. I'm inside of my code editor, and I'm going to open up my SRC directory. Now remember, our goal right now is to get a better idea of how JSX works. So I want to delete all the code inside this SRC directory, and we're going to replace it with one or two files in which we're going to experiment in just a little bit, and we'll get a better idea of exactly how JSX works. So I'm going to highlight everything inside of the SRC folder, just the SRC folder, and I'm going to delete all of it. All right, so now the SRC directory is empty. Once it's empty, I'm then going to create a new file inside there called index.js. Now the name of this file is very special, so make sure you call your file index.js as well. I'll tell you a little bit later on why this file is so special. Now, when I create this new file, I can flip back over to my browser where I have my React application running at localhost 3000. And if I refresh the page, you'll notice that it's now completely white. Nothing at all shows up. So for right now, let's set a very small short-term goal. Let's say that we want to figure out how to use React to get some content to appear on the screen. Once we figure out how to get some content to appear on the screen using React, we'll then be able to start to play around with JSX a little bit and get a better idea of the rules around it. So in order to get some content to appear, I'm going to put some comments into my index.js file that I just created. I'm going to place 3 comments inside of here that are going to guide me through the process of getting content to show on the screen when using React. So the first comment I'm going to put in here, I'm going to say import the React and React DOM libraries. Remember, back when we were using CodePen, we had to actually add React and React DOM as dependencies to our project. So we essentially have to go through a similar step here as well. I'll then give myself a little bit of space, and I'll put down my next step. So the second step will be to create a React component. We spoke very briefly about React components back when we worked on CodePen, so we'll talk a little bit more about what React components are in just a little bit. And then finally, I'll give myself a little bit more space and put on one more comment. And down here, I'll say, take the React component and show it on the screen. Okay, so that's it. It's a 3-step process to get some content to show up on the screen of our browser. Let's begin right now with step number 1. I want to import the React and React DOM libraries. In order to do so, I'm going to write out import React from React, and then import React DOM from React-DOM. Okay, so just right there with these 2 lines of code, we've got a lot of crazy stuff going on. I want to talk to you a little bit about exactly what import statements are and why we have to use them at all. But before I do, I want you to take special note and make sure that you put capital DOM in your import statement as well. Okay, so what's with the import statement? You'll recall that back over on the other project we worked on over on CodePen, we didn't have to write an import statement. We just added React and React DOM to our project, and that was pretty much it. Well, now that we're using Create React App, we are using a bundler system called Webpack. We'll talk about what Webpack is and why we're using it, but for right now, all we need to understand is that every file that we create inside of our project is essentially its own tiny little universe. Any code that we write inside this file is not going to be automatically shared or made available with other files, and vice versa. So in other words, if we want to get access to any libraries or any other code that we write inside of our project, we have to write an import statement like the one you see right here. Now, import statements have a lot of different rules around the syntax of them. We'll investigate a lot of the different syntax rules a little bit later on. But for right now, let's just kind of examine the import statement that we're making use of. All right, so quick diagram. So first we place the import keyword. This tells JavaScript that we want to reach out to either a dependency or another file inside of our project. So import statements like this can be used to import either dependencies or packages that we install to our project, such as React and React DOM, or files that you and I author. The second word is going to be the name of a variable that we want to take all the code from that dependency or file and assign to. Now, I said that kind of awkwardly. Essentially what's going on here is we're going to reach out to the React dependency, we're going to take all the code inside that dependency, and then assign it to this React variable. Now, one thing to be aware of is that the name of this variable right here does not have to be exactly React. We could very easily rename it to something like myReact if we wanted to. But in general, we follow a convention where we name our variable along with the name of the library itself. So if the library name is React, we assign it to a variable called React. If the name of the variable of the library is React DOM, we assign it to a variable called React DOM, and so on. Next up, the from keyword pretty much just says we want to pull code from a file or a dependency. And then finally, we list either the dependency that we want to import from or a path to the file that we want to import, in the case that we are importing a file that you and I create ourselves. Now, if we list out a dependency right here, what's going to happen is JavaScript is going to say, okay, I see you want React. It's then going to look inside of the node modules directory, and it's going to try to find a folder inside of here called React. So if you scroll way down inside that node modules folder all the way to the R's, you're going to see that we have a folder called React right here. So when we say import React from React, that means go and find the React folder inside the node modules directory and get all the code from inside there. And then the same thing with React DOM as well. You'll see the React DOM folder is right there. So if we wanted to, we could technically import any of the different folders that you see inside of our node modules directory. We could also install more modules into this node modules directory and import those as well. But in general, obviously, we only import the dependencies we actually want to use and really care about. Okay, now quick thing I want to mention here, you're seeing the import syntax for pulling code from another file or a dependency. If you've ever worked with a Node.js project before, you might have seen a slightly different way of requiring in other files or dependencies, one which uses something called the require function. So just as a quick example, you might have seen code in the past that looks something like this, const react equals require react. You don't have to write that here, I just want to show you a quick example. So I want to very quickly tell you about the difference between a require statement and an import statement. When we make use of an import statement, that is a reference to a module system called ES 2015 modules. This module system is essentially a set of rules that describes how code can be shared between different JavaScript files. There is a different module system called CommonJS. This is a different set of rules that also governs how to share code between different files. If we're using ES 2015 modules, and that's what you and I are using, we use the import syntax in order to import other files or other code. But if we make use of the CommonJS module system, we make use of the require syntax instead. So if you've ever seen these two different types of import or require statements, essentially they're just making use of different module systems. Okay, so I think that's pretty good for this first little step right here. Just 2 lines of code, but there's a lot of knowledge to be had. And let's take a quick pause right here. We'll come back to the next section, and we're going to start to create our React component.